Hello, welcome to Cowboy Red. As Nottingham Forest slipped to 16th in the Premier League after their 3-0 defeat to Liverpool yesterday. A case of individual errors proving costly as a pretty insipid performance. Their Forest head into a very tricky-looking game against Aston Villa without too many attacking options. We're going to discuss all that, first of all, in the company of Reds legend Garry Birtles. Gary, good to have you with us. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. A bit later than normal, so appreciate people's patience. Normally do this in the mornings, but good to have you with us. Mikey Clarke, good to have you with us as normal.
Yeah, cheers, Matt. Hi, everybody. Yep, good to be here.
Michael Temple stepping off the bench at the last minute for Emily Anderson, an enforced change like Forest. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just thinking how many more injuries before Garry Birtles gets a call from Cooper. He becomes a number 9 again.
The only thing I could do was possibly hold the ball up now. That's it. I wouldn't be able to go beyond the defenders or anything like that. I'd come towards the ball, but probably wouldn't get it.
Well, they needed that yesterday. They're certainly short on strikers. That's on our topic list. So we'll get into that. Before we start, we should mention, well, a tragedy for the sport, for a sporting city this week with Nottingham Panthers losing Adam Johnson, their player, in a freakish, tragic accident. Without going into details, obviously, a lot of Panthers fans will watch this. So our thoughts are with the club, the team. I used to cover them for about 4 years. Some lovely people down there. So yeah, thoughts with them, thoughts with the team, thoughts with the fans who were there to witness it. Yeah, terrible times. But yeah, we'll talk about something far less consequential, even though I know it drives the passions of people in terms of the team they love in Nottingham Forest. Let's get into that. Temps, as the last minute edition, I'll give you the honours. Just give us some general thoughts on yesterday and what you made of it.
Well, the second I saw that Chris Wood was injured, I feared for us and tried to second guess the system that he might play. But clearly, without that focal point of Taiwo or Chris Woods up top from the off, we were going to struggle, and we just couldn't occupy their defenders at all. They enjoyed the ball with very little pressure. They were happy to build attacks. They were also happy to spring us on the break, which they do with such devastating pace and power that it's happy to stop. So I thought they were good value for the 3-0 win. We did very little to resist it. It was a poor performance. We were extremely blunt first half. Did improve when Taiwo was introduced, but you can't go to Liverpool without those two key players missing and expect to come away with any kind of result when the team that you've selected is ultimately a plan C.
Is that a bit of a frustration for you, Mikey? I think we've said this. I thought we'd lose. I probably just expected a bit more fight, a bit more bite, a bit more battle. Was that missing yesterday?
Yeah, I think so. I echo what Temps has just said, but it is very difficult when you're missing, key players at the top end of the pitch. I think if for those people that have listened to Steve Cooper's interview afterwards, he kind of alluded to the fact that was Plan C, maybe even Plan D. In the original plan was to play a back four, maybe to be more on the front foot, press their back four, because they have looked a bit shaky this season, a little bit unlike Liverpool. So, there was a hope pre-match that we could get at them. But when we've literally not got a recognised striker out on the pitch until about 15 minutes to go, it was always going to be difficult. I think my frustration was not with the fact that we got beat, and plenty of teams will go there and lose more than 3-0 and just be on the back foot like we were. It reminded me a little bit of the Man City performance in the first the first half, I guess. We showed them a hell of a lot of respect. I can't really remember a tackle going in. And that's kind of my frustration. Yes, we've had to resort to a low block, probably more defenders on the pitch or midfielders on the pitch than we would have liked. But that's no excuse for not getting, and I know I sound like an 80s football fan, but getting stuck in. And I just felt that we didn't. And so I was extremely frustrated at half time. And I think it was only 3-0. Because they kind of took their foot off the gas. I'll be honest with you. That's kind of where I thought we were coming from. But we did look better when we made the changes. We went to a back four. Taiwo got introduced. It was great to see him get 20 minutes. Hopefully he can get at least maybe 60 next week. But we do look a completely different team when we are backing off into our own half. And to go there to Anfield and expect Liverpool not to break us down in 100 minutes of football, it's just never going to happen. So we were on a losing errand right from the start. I thought it was just really disappointing.
I suppose, Gary, we've spoken about this before. We've probably spoken about this before we even started recording, but the recurring two words are avoidable goals. And I think that was a big frustration yesterday. All 3 goals we had a hand in to varying degrees, didn't we?
Yeah, and that was what we were talking about a lot last season. Steve alluded to it in his pre-match, his post-match interview. And Yeah, you've got to stop doing that. You'll get away with it in the Championship, but in the Premier League, you won't get away with it. I mean, last season, we took Liverpool to 3-2 at Anfield. We got really close. We beat them at home 1-0. So we know we can get close to these teams. We lost to Arsenal 2-1, lost 5-0 last season. Never scored against United, but scored, to Old Trafford. So there has been small improvements. But, I'll go back to what I said earlier in the season. We haven't signed a striker. That was my one big worry. If Taiwo got injured, we could struggle. But Chris came in and did a good job, scored goals. Now he's injured. We struggle without that, and that's how important strikers are at any level of football. If you lose them, you are going to struggle. And I was watching the Tottenham game as well, and I thought, we're missing Brennan as well. That showed me when he made the goal for Son. I thought, a big smile on his face. How many times have we seen him do that, for Forest? And yeah, it was a concern at the weekend, especially with these big games coming up. I was at Brighton yesterday. We've got them coming up. They were at 6s and 7s a little bit yesterday because he changed things. He made 3 big changes, changed the system, and they looked a little bit lethargic first half until, in the final third, they did really well. They've got a lot of pace, a lot of firepower. But then Fulham came back into it. So I think we've got some very difficult games coming up. And the 2 games, the critical games with me, and it's not in hindsight, we should have beaten Palace because they were absolutely down to bare bones. And of course, we should have beaten Luton. I was talking to, a few mates in football, and I said, when we played and we got 2-0 in front, we wanted to go 3-0 in front, and we didn't change things. We went 4-0, and then you change things because they say 2-0 is the most precarious lead in football. I never understood that because I always used to love being 2-0 up. But, you see fresh faces, fresh legs come on. They're not match tuned in. And, it can happen. And it shouldn't have happened against Luton, but it did. And those 2 results now could put a lot of pressure on the next 3 games because they're going to be mightily difficult, especially with Everton winning at West Ham.
Do you think, Thames, this is slightly away from the Liverpool game, but did we see the impact of we didn't lose, drawing with Luton affects the way fans reacted to yesterday's game? That hangover exists until we get a result, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think Greg nailed it in the comments a minute ago when he said we haven't actually failed by losing to those big 4 sides as we have in Arsenal, Man United.
Different Greg, Garry.
Yeah. All right. Man City and Liverpool, that the frustration is born out of those draws, and that's a really accurate observation. So yes, the hangover and the manner in which that certain sections of the support are framing this defeat against Liverpool is off the back of the disappointment from Luton, which we need to put out of our minds and move forwards now. But yeah, they're the errors we've made. We've dropped points against weaker opposition. We were never expected to beat these 4 teams on the road. Tactically, we got it right at Man United away. We found a way to give ourselves a chance in the game. The most heartening thing that I heard was Steve Cooper's plan A was to play a back 4, because I think at this stage last season, he would have gone into the game looking to shut up shop and have a low block. And it was only when he discovered Chris Wood's hamstring injury that he had to shuffle the pack and decided that we needed to defend from the off and park the bus. So what will happen when Taiwo is fully fit? How quickly can that happen? How quickly can we get him back into the side and become a front foot side on the road? Because that's a seismic change for me. That wasn't what he wanted to do against Liverpool. He didn't have the personnel available. We clearly don't trust Divock Origi to lead the line at this point. And with Chris Wood out for 4 weeks, Taiwo's ability to start and get somewhere towards finishing a game will be critical in getting us back to where we want to be.
Yeah, I think Origi's injured as well, to be fair. That's a good...
Wouldn't it? Let's have another international break. Bring it forward a couple of weeks so we can get our players.
As Temp says, I mean, we've got 10 points. If we beaten Luton, we'd be on 12, which is level with Chelsea in 11th, which is roughly where we should be. I just think it's a very big hangover, which slants our way on things. For looking at the game, Mikey, going back to it, I felt like we were really quite comfortable. I know Liverpool dominating the ball, and they had one shot which Turner saved. But then, to what extent do you blame Murillo for going on that run? And how was that? Has he cost us a goal there? Basically, do you think?
No, I don't think he has. And I know I'm probably in the minority here, but for us to evolve as a team, we do need centre-backs that come out and spread it. Now, I think the only issue I had there is he'd already beaten two men, and then he tried to beat a third. Not many people can beat one man, never mind two. I guess just the learning from him is get halfway out of space and just pop it off. I think he maybe got a rush of blood to the head after his Palace heroics with that run. But no, I think that's just the way you're going to play. You look at the Premier League all over this weekend, the amount of goals that were given away from teams trying to play out the back, that's just the way it is, and you are going to do it. And was it the right thing to do half an hour into a game at Anfield when you've quietened the crowd? I say quietened, they were quiet from minute one, but I think everybody understands what I mean. I'm not too sure, but I wouldn't have a go at Murillo. I think he is an incredible footballer and will be an incredible footballer for us. I point the finger at others making certain mistakes, so I may come across sounding a little bit harsh here, but I think Turner could have done better with that first goal, parrying it straight into the middle for a tap-in. Maybe being harsh, I'd like to think he could have put it wide, and then that third goal was just a disaster zone. So, and also the second goal, Sangare tracking back. So you can look at those avoidable goals, as you and Gary were saying at the start, Matt, and there were three avoidable goals. But I do think, I never thought Liverpool were absolutely peppering us, but then again, we didn't look after the ball very well. You know, we had one shot on target. That was literally the last kick of the game. I know we hit the bar a few minutes before that, but it goes back to what I said. I think Liverpool playing in first and second gear, but you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because we talk about evolving the style, centre-backs being comfortable on the ball, coming out, pushing up the pitch, but then we can't then chastise them when they give it away. I just think the only thing was he probably just tried to do too much. He'd already done the hard work. But it's just an evolution. Like you said, Matt, and like Temp said as well, we lost to Liverpool. Most teams will lose to Liverpool. The key was the previous week, and the key going forward is going to be Villa. If we beat Villa, the whole thing looks completely different, because then we go to West Ham and we have a couple more home games where people's perception of how we're evolving as a team is higher than what it is right now. You know, there's a bit of doom and gloom, me included, I would think. But I'm trying to be on that side where I'm thinking you're not going to have a linear progression with this team. There are going to be ups and downs. We are suffering a lot of injury crisis at the moment in the forward position. So you just got to back the boys and stay with them, I think. But no, all those goals were avoidable, Matt. And he just tried to do too much for the first one. It's as simple as that.
See, I've got a totally different take on that. Clint Eastwood did a film and he said a good man always knows his limitations. and that applies to anything. And the top teams are the top teams because we've got the best players in the best positions who know what to do at the right time. You have to pick your time. You can't just because everybody's saying, well, that's the way it is nowadays. Let's do it and keep getting beaten, keep making mistakes. That is ridiculous. But that's what's happening. I agree with you. It seems like you do it and be damned. But you do it and be damned, you get relegated. You know, just think who you are, where you are, and you know how good you are, and try and cut those mistakes out. It doesn't make you a bad player at centre half if you try and play it into the channel. How many times have we seen teams do that? Luton have been doing it to teams. You know, they leave it behind. They don't take a chance, a real chance. They'll try and play it out from the back, but if it gets a bit tight, they'll turn the opposition defence. And even Manchester City do it when they're in, you know, certain bad positions. So it's not just a thing that teams in the lower half of the table do. You've got to pick your moments. You can't just say, right, well, it's good to see them do it. You know, if you get punished, then so be it. But it's the Premier League we're talking about. You know, you can't afford to keep doing it. I mean, the Arsenal game at the start of the season, Saka scored a great goal. But where did it come from? We gave it away in the left-back position. You know, needlessly. You can't keep doing that. If you keep doing it, you'll slip further down the league. You have to get the basics right. I did this in commentary yesterday about basics. The game I did was Brighton-Fulham, and Brighton dominated the game. And I've got to give Marco Silva so much respect for what he changed at half-time. Didn't change personnel, but you would not believe the change in the attitude of the players. They pressed high, 3-4 players around the box. First half, Brighton were coming out at will. You know, Lewis Dunk was allowed to play out. Second half, the pressure on the goalkeeper and the back four made them make mistakes. And you can do that. It's just a little tweaks of things and what we call basics in football. If you can do those right, you've got half a chance. You don't have to come round out and beat 3 players, from the back. I mean, I played centre half, and I could do that because I played up front. My touch was good. I'm used to taking players on, and the gaffer used to give me a bollocking now and again, for trying to do it. But I know what it is to try and bring the ball out. But it's just those 2 games before Liverpool. If we've got something out of them, we wouldn't be talking like this. And it's just, I was at the Palace game, and I know we should have won that. And I think Steve knows we should have won it. We're unlucky. Gibbs White hit the post and everything. But you have to put those behind you. You've got so many difficult games coming up now. But it is a concern. No striker, no striker. Do you try and rush Taiwo back a little bit quicker than you want to? Yeah, it's a really difficult one to assess. But with Everton winning, the only good thing at the moment is the teams below that are really struggling. And that's the one thing that you can take out of everything. They're getting beat. Heavily at times. So the next 3 or 4 games will be a massive test for us.
Cooper actually said after the game he played Taiwo for longer than he should have done, as advised by the medics. So that's a worry when it comes to starting on against Villa. As the thing with Murillo attempts, it's sort of like Garry says, maybe just knowing when to do it. It's like he was pinging passes, and that's great, but that run was probably slightly ill-timed when we were we were doing a decent job.
Let's just go back to Lewis Dunk, who's just got in the England side. What he was doing yesterday, he was bringing it out when he needed to because they were letting him. Second half, his passing capacity was absolutely superb. He was pinging it wide to feet, and he hardly gave the ball away. His distribution was fabulous. He did things at the right time. In the first half, he was allowed to bring it out. He brought it out. Didn't take any chances. Second half, he was under pressure. Didn't take any chances. And his passing was terrific. So I'll let you go on now. But I thought I had to bring that into play.
Yeah, Lewis Dunk's a good example of this. You've got to remember the quality, the craft and the guide of the players that you're playing against, to the point where they may not press you the first 2-3 times. They may want Murillo to accept that he's going to dribble out through the first third and try to dribble around the press even. Give him the space, allow him to do it. And then on the 4th time he tries to do it, there's a trigger and they swamp him. And that's the difference. He's come through Brazilian age groups. He's played a handful of first team games in the Brazilian league where every centre half probably fancies himself as the next Ronaldo. And now he's found this level where it's entirely more brutal, entirely more well researched, where everyone has pinpoint information about what you do, what you're likely to, what your strengths and weaknesses are. So what would you do if you're an opposition manager trying to quell Murillo? You probably would have a look at him, let him do it a couple of times and swamp him on the 3rd. He's got to accept that, become aware of his surroundings, become aware of the level, and look at players like Lewis Dunk, as Garry mentioned, like Thiago Silva, who've been proponents of this for a long time and know when and where to employ the trick and when it just needs to be a channel ball. However, how do you play a channel ball when you've got Anthony Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White up front? It's wasting possession, as we found again and again against Liverpool. It reminded me of Man City away towards the start of last season, where we were humping it long to, I think Lingard played in that game with Brennan Johnson, Gibbs-White may have been the 3rd. But the channel ball is not an option if you haven't got those personnel. So early in the game, we tried to play the through balls, get them in behind, but Elanga was starting from such a position of depth that he couldn't get around the fullbacks and make those balls effective. So I understand the frustration of the Forest defence, who didn't have an awful lot to pass to, had a well-drilled Liverpool press, Liverpool shape that was hard to get around, and made mistake after mistake. There's nothing to be celebrated from that performance. You can only forgive elements of it because of the personnel that were available. But to answer the question on Murillo, yes, he was overplaying a little bit yesterday. We shouldn't quell him. That's his strength. He's got a little bit of X factor that none of our other centre halves have in that dribbling ability. But let's make him aware through the video, through experience, when and when not to do things like that, and what is an acceptable level of risk in a game of Premier League football.
I watched the Spurs Palace game, and it's interesting if anyone watched it. They centre half to keeper, time and time again, just trying to draw Palace out and then go. And we gifted that to Liverpool by doing that. And I think that's that was a disappointment, because then one brings two with Forest so often, especially when you play deep. And Sangare, Garry, we'll talk about him in a wider context, but on that goal, Garry, he doesn't go with his man. And that, you talk about basics. I mean, that's proper basics, isn't it?
It is basics, and it was very similar to maybe. Keep going back to the game I did, because you have to, because similar things happen. And Reed gave it away for Fulham in a bad area, just on the halfway line, and he didn't track back. He just jogged back in. And I'm saying, why is he not trying to break his neck to get back in there? And the next minute, Ferguson stuck it in the back of the net, the 1-0 down. That's a similar thing. You have to not switch off, because if you switch off at that level, the Premier League is the toughest league in the world, and teams like that will punish you every time if you give them the opportunity. Like I say, the Championship, you'll get away with it a lot of the time, and further you go down, you'll get away with it more or less all the time. But the Premier League is harsh. It's difficult to get adjusted to, and we've got a lot of players who have not played in the Premier League, who have got it on a learning curve a little bit. Yes, you can watch every Premier League game in a season, but until you're actually out on the pitch playing in one and what it entails, you could be lost. You could lose your way a little bit. And I think you have to respect the Premier League for what it is. And like you say, I keep using that word, do the basics right. If you do that, you've got a chance.
And Sangare, Mikey, we discussed him on last Wednesday. We had a question about him, and I said he's only played 5 games. You've got to give him time, and I still stick by that. Game 6 was a dud, but we have to have some patience with him still.
Yeah, you do. You've got to think where he's come from. He has played at a high level, but he was playing in Holland, I think, wasn't he? Was it PSV?
Yeah, different league.
It's going to take time for him to sort of get to grips with the pace, the intensity, the ferocity of it. I did like a little pass he played out to Elanga right near the end as well. So once he gets his head up and he's got a bit of space around him, he looks a lovely player, and I'm sure he'll go into it. There are numerous examples over the years of players that have just taken a little bit of time to settle, even back to players like Dennis Bergkamp back in the 90s. He struggled in his first few months. Even the best players take a bit of time to settle. The guy would have uprooted his family. He's living in a different culture, different, everything's different about it. So just give him a bit of time. There's clearly quality there. He just looks a bit off the pace at the moment. But I think it was nice to see him do more minutes at Liverpool. Did he play the full game, or did we take him off right near the end? I can't remember.
I think he played the full game, didn't he?
I think he did too, yeah. So that's good. So they're obviously building him up, because if you remember in previous games, he's come off with sort of 20, 25 minutes to go. So they're obviously getting him to a stage where he can play that full 90. And I do think he will come into his own, because he's clearly talent there. Absolutely. So I'm not overly worried at all, because, we would have done our research. I certainly knew about him before we signed him, as did a lot of people. There was a lot of excitement when he signed. He's just not necessarily hit the ground running. But then again, you can say that about a few of them, to be honest. And you can go back to last season.
Drogba, Zola, all those great players never came and nailed it straight away.
No, absolutely. Spot on. So
true. Let's move on to the third goal. The biggest car crash of the lot. It probably got worse with each one. I'll ask you about Turner in a second, Temps. Just Garry, from a former player's point of view, is that all on Turner, or does Toffolo have to do better? What went wrong there?
Well, when I was a defender, I don't know exactly what you can never tell totally, but when I was playing centre half, I always wanted a massive shout from a goalkeeper. You were desperate for the goalkeeper, because he can see everything. He can see what's going on. You don't know what's behind you. He knows he can see the full picture. So, he probably, needed a little bit of help. But those things happens in a match. It's not like you've given a ball away stupidly. It's, sometimes you can get those goals that, can look a little bit comical and a little bit, well, why did they do that? But, it didn't affect the game in any way in respect to the scoreline or anything, or how we played. It was just one of those things. Sometimes you can say it's just one of those things. And as long as you learn from the mistakes you make, I think that's the problem at times. Maybe we've not learned from what we've done before in previous games and last season, in trying to correct the mistakes that we've made that have been, obvious mistakes. And I think we've got to, if we can cut those out, we've got a chance of moving up the table. But if you keep making the mistakes, you're going to get stuck in a mire, and your confidence gets knocked. If you've got nothing up front, you're going to struggle because before we had Brennan's pace. Brennan wasn't an out-and-out striker, but we knew if we got the ball and we set him free. How many times did we see him, just do that on our counter-attacks? But we haven't got that facility. Alanga tried to play that game. It's not an easy game to play by yourself up front. I watched Ferguson, the young lad for Brighton, who Alan Shearer reckons he's got the lot, and he's a talent. Didn't have a lot to do. Didn't get many touches, and when it came his way, he scored a cracking goal. And it's like Graham Souness said, don't let your children be strikers now because they don't get a kick. And it's true. It's becoming like that for strikers. They're very, very seldom in a game. Even Haaland, he doesn't get a lot of touches, but he's a totally different player to everybody else. When you watch him, you saw him yesterday. I mean, the header he missed was easier than the one he scored. But he's always there to be in a position where if it comes his way, he's going to punish people. But yeah, it's so difficult when you haven't got an out-and-out striker. We saw that, at times last season, and I always bang on about it because I played that position. It's a totally different game. I would have been frustrated. I'd have been swearing at people because I wasn't getting a kick. It's a totally different game now, but you have to try and adapt to that, and it's not always that easy.
No, I think Alanga did fine. You can see he's not a 9. He worked hard. He ran offside a bit too much because I don't think he was used to it. But yeah, he did his best. On the keeper attempts, I feel like I'm a bit of a knee-jerk here because I said we should stick with him before this game, but now I feel like you should change it because I just don't feel like he inspires confidence. I feel like he's got a rick in him. And it's probably a bit harsh. He hasn't been terrible, but I suppose the interesting thing is, to me, if you were to line up our last 4 keepers, Samba, Henderson, Navas and Turner, he's number 4 on that list by a fair distance, which is a bit harsh probably. So I would make a change now, especially as the next game's at home. What would you do?
Well, until that third goal, he's been the grey man, hasn't he? We haven't really noticed him in a negative or positive sense. He's done okay. I haven't called for a change until this point, but that's the kind of incidents where a goalkeeper has been knocking on Stevie Cooper's door every week, says, what do I need to do to get a go here, Gaffer, especially when there's been gaffes like that. So I think next weekend probably is the debut for Vlachodimos Odysseus, Vlachodimos, whatever we're choosing to call him. I think he will make that change because that ball needs heading. It cannot bounce. As soon as that ball bounces, you're watching Sunday League, aren't you? It was his ball to win. I think it was Toffolo that was tracking back. He has to take control. He has to communicate clearly. But more importantly than anything else, he has to get something on that ball. And for that reason, and what it shows about the presence, the confidence, the state of mind, whatever, I think it's time for a change this weekend. Not writing him off. I think that he may well come back into the side at some point, and we haven't seen the Greek keeper in a Forest shirt to this point, but I think he'll get his first chance at the weekend.
But I think the thing is, goalkeepers and strikers always get the biggest amount of stick because if you miss easy chances, you're pilloried. If you make mistakes as a goalkeeper, you're pilloried. Midfield's the safest position in the world, unless you're making a complete and utter rick. I was lucky enough to play with some of the best goalkeepers ever. You go Shilton, you go Woods, you go Van Breukelen, you go Sagers, Sutton. We had so many good goalkeepers. I played at Grimsby with Steve Sherwood, who was tremendous, what he did for Watford. Even at Notts County, I played with Mick Leonard, who was a terrific goalkeeper as well. So, you're lucky to play behind or in front of people like that. And you know how important they are to you because, like I've said, they read the game. They see what's going on. They can shout at you. They can cajole you. And you need that. And I like to see goalkeepers do that. You see the top ones. Pickford's one of those. He's always shouting. He's always bawling. And, he's just trying to help. And that's how important goalkeepers are to defenders.
I mean, just briefly, Mikey, on that. I mean, yeah, he's a good. You're sceptical about his shot stopping. Even I think he's a good shot stopper, but it's just ball at feet, decision making. Maybe is just a little bit. He doesn't feel like an elite Premier League keeper, and I don't know if Vlachodimos is, but I kind of like to find out, I think.
Yeah, I'd argue that every or most Premier League keepers are good shot stoppers. I think that's the basic thing. So I know on this podcast most people have been saying stick with Turner. I think I've been the other way, to be honest. I think he should have saved the goal against Brentford that they scored, slipped through his fingers. I had questions about the second for Luton. He could have done better there, and I think at least two of the goals.
I saw that on Twitter. I think that's a bit harsh.
Yeah, I don't, but I certainly think two of the goals were partly, if not all, his fault yesterday. And all I would say is I would make the change for the reasons that you guys have said. I think this new keeper we've got, the Greece international keeper, by all accounts, has played at the highest level since he was 22, 23. I'd have made the change against Luton. I'd have made the change against Anfield because he won't be overawed by this. But as Temp said, this is the ideal opportunity to get him in. Is it 3 of the next 4 at home? I think you'll be hard pressed, I think, to find anybody that can provide a compelling case for not making that change now, if I'm honest with you.
In a man management perspective as well, Mikey, I think if he gets bombed this week, he's got no complaints, has he?
Absolutely.
If he gets bombed in the last 3 weeks, he probably has. He's done okay. But it's difficult for him to come back in that conversation when he's got an international keeper waiting in the wings. And he's had a bit of a mare there. So I think Steve Cooper will seize that opportunity to have a look at his understudy.
True. You getting your steps in there, Gary?
No, what's just happened? The dog's just come back, and then she was jumping up all over me. I tried to keep her off the picture and everything, and I was just checking she's still in the kitchen. So, and she is, so that's okay.
There you go.
His ironing's just turned up.
Yeah, well, you got Temps' one to talk for those who saw his dry cleaning arrive last week. Right, let's move on. One thing I said on Twitter about the midfields, I'm not saying play Ryan Yates before people jump on me here, but I thought we lacked a real Ryan Yates presence and intensity. Is that fair, Temps, for you?
Well, look, 4 weeks ago, I'm saying on here, Ryan Yates isn't our best player, but he's one of our most important players, and that energy has gone missing a little bit during this time that we've waited for Sangare to adapt to his surroundings. What do I think now? I think Mangala has emerged as an automatic pick. Dominguez has established himself as the best all-round midfielder in the squad. And Sangare has shown flashes of ability, but hasn't maintained consistent form. So if you want to ink those three in, Yates is nowhere near it, unfortunately, at this point, unless he goes on some kind of Jack Colback, Chris Cohen-esque mission to retrain himself as a more defensively minded player in a different position. So it's a tough spot for Yates at the minute because his cameos are all action. He's going to be impactful immediately. He's tireless. He's energetic. He makes intelligent fouls. Ryan Yates. He's not just a hatchet man in centre mid. He only grabs the yellow card when he really needs to, and he's right on the edge of being back in this side. But it's going to take a pretty spectacular drop in form from Sangare to allow him into this side because his ceiling is so much higher. He will adapt, as Mikey said earlier, as he gets used to the pace and the level from the relatively pedestrian surroundings that he's been in the Dutch league. So tough place for Ryan Yates. I think his immediate future is in making a big impact from the bench. He'll continue to do that. He adds value to the squad, but I can't see him starting if we're looking to establish those three as the foundation of a front foot Forest side.
I think you're a little bit off there. The number of times he's made a difference when he's come on or when he's started, you've got to take into consideration what the others are doing. Are they creating chances? Are they scoring goals? Can they do what he can do, in certain areas of the pitch? Do they know the Premier League? No, they don't. Does he know the Premier League? Yes, he does. And those things have got to come into consideration. It's all right saying, well, you've got to give them time. You've got to give them time to, break them in and everything. But you could be losing game after game by doing that. I think sometimes you have to go with tried and tested. And, he's never let us down. A lot of people gave him stick at one point and then changed their mind because of, what he did last season for us in the back end of the season. Him and Joe Worrell, without those two, I still think we'd have gone down. I honestly do, because their performances were, particularly good, and they knew what they had to do. And it is a hard learning curve. I say this all the time. The time, the Premier League. Yes, they've got great ability. Yes, Drogba had great ability. Yes, Bergkamp, the ones we've mentioned, but they, great as they were, it didn't come straight away. But they had more great players around them to make sure that it did come round quicker than maybe it would for our players, if that makes any sense. It's like the Man City, the players they bring in, Jack Grealish came in there and there was a few tuts and murmurs about him, but yesterday I believe he was absolutely superb, more or less man of the match, because, he's adapted to what is needed in the Premier League under, that football team. And because they've got stacks of players, in and around who can do very similar things, change games, then they're always going to be up there. That's why I love the Brightons, because they're tapping on the door, they're tapping on the ankles of the top boys, and you love to see that. Like Newcastle getting involved, but you have to do that on a consistent basis. That's the difficulty in the Premier League. Consistency is paramount. Again, that saying, great players don't get better; they get more consistent. Great teams don't get better; they get more consistent. They consistently nick games, they win games, they grind games out. They've got the players to do that. And I think Ryan Yates comes into, that sort of ilk, that you have to have, and put him in there maybe from the start, instead of saying, all right, we'll bring him on and, he might do this and he might do that. It's very, very difficult, believe me, being a sub and coming on and being expected to do. David Johnson did it, super sub at Liverpool. Not many can come on and have an impact like he does, or he did, sorry. And it's a difficult one, because the expectation levels when you come on as a sub, if you're expected to suddenly turn the game on its head, is so difficult. Some players can do it, some can't. But, I think like players like Ryan Yates, as we saw last season, can be so beneficial to you when you start them.
He was immense last year, and it frustrated a lot of Forest fans when they saw players like Freuler and Shelby getting minutes over him at certain times. It's just that bit harder now for him to displace someone of the ability of a Sangare, the form of Mangala, and the different skill set of Dominguez. I hope he's still in a mix with those three for minutes, but this is the hardest battle he's ever faced for a centre mid shirt.
So I'll just say to you, how many assists has been achieved by those players you've just mentioned?
Yeah, not enough, Gary. Not enough.
How many goals has come scored wise from those players?
Yeah, Dominguez header
scored against Brentford, didn't he?
Yeah. Does Ryan Yates look a bigger threat from set pieces and delivers into the box?
Yes, well, it was hell of a ball to Ilanga, wasn't it, at the weekend from Yatesy?
Yeah. It's a difficult one, but you have to look at the overall picture. You can't just say, well, he's doing this, doing that. You buy players to make an impact. You don't buy players to hit the odd decent pass and have the odd decent run. It's the Premier League. You buy players to consistently do it for you. That's why Man City win things. That's why Man United are losing at the moment. There's just no consistency. There's just nothing there with a spark. They have the players in there, but there's just nothing happening. And I just think you've got to assess it a little bit differently at times and say, right, horses for courses. We know he can do this. Let's put him in there, see if he does a better job. Because there's one thing you get from him is a massive 100% every time he pulls a shirt on. No matter if he passes it, erratically sometimes, if he puts it out of play, you're going to get every ounce of his energy for 90 minutes.
I think I still sit with the same three. I just challenge Sangare to be more physically dominant against, because they've got Kamara and they've got McGinn and they've got Louise. That's a very good three. And we need to step up. If Yates comes in, it's kind of I would call I back, but it's a big call to drop your £30 million man. Unless you drop Dominguez, which I wouldn't do, and I wouldn't drop Mangala. So that's probably why. But Yates could be knocking on the manager's door this week and saying, give me a start.
You look at the goal scoring charts, Woods and Awoniyi apart, who's the next top goal scorer?
Probably Dominguez and Hudson-Odoi have got
Willy
one.
Bolly.
Willy Bolly, yeah, has got one at Man U.
Yeah. There you go. Yesterday, Fulham's top scorer was 2. Decadiva Reed, whatever his name. Yeah, he's got 2. You know that if you're going to have that, you're going to be struggling in the Premier League. You know, I think Fulham are still they're still above us, even though the top scorer's only got 2 goals.
Well, if Awoniyi can't start, then I'd play a back 4, and then I'd have maybe get 2 people pushed on, and maybe Yates is one of those with Dominguez, and you play sacrifice a defender for Yates if Awoniyi can't start, and then plays kind of box midfield. But that's getting into Thursday stuff. But yeah, there's ways to get him in the team still. Right. Yes, if you are enjoying this, I pressed the wrong button. Here's the right button. Like and subscribe. Do us a favor. We've got over 8,000 subscribers now, so that is certainly a big help. Right, where to next? Oh yeah, the lack of strikers, Gary. You've touched on it. No Wood for a month. Taiwo probably can't start. No Hudson-Odoi. No Origi. Elanga was half fit in this game. Gibbs-White hasn't quite looked the same. We're going into a tough run of games, and I'm kind of worried about where the goals are coming from.
Well, I hate to say I told you so, but I said this weeks and weeks ago. You know, we're talking about signings, and everybody's saying, well, this guy's coming in, this guy's coming in. And I kept saying, hold on a minute. We need a striker. We need a striker. And we haven't got a new striker. You know, one who would, stand out. Yeah, we've got Origi, still question marks about him. Hudson-Odoi, still question marks about him. And it can come back to bite you on the bum a little bit. And, it'll just, these next games will tell us, if that's the case. But
sorry to interject, Gary, just on that. A few people messaging me saying, well, Aguilera is mentioned who hasn't really featured yet. And also, can't we play someone from the academy? And you should always have a striker on the bench. You can't. I don't think you can get 30 minutes out of an academy kid in the Premier League. I'd play Elanga or someone else. What's your view on that?
Well, on the bench yesterday for, I think, Brighton, there were 2 academy kids on the bench.
Yeah, but our academy kids haven't played a single game of senior football.
Well, if you've got them on the bench, you've got nothing to lose sometimes because, youngsters play with no fear. Brennan's only 22, but, we saw what he was like at 20. Some players can come out. I mean, the boy Ferguson, 19, at Brighton, starts the game, scores the goal. Age sometimes is taken a little bit too literally. Some players adapt more at a younger age than others. That's what annoys me about, maturity and, football and size and everything. It was always, you've got to mature at the same time. Well, we don't mature at the same time as men, as players. Everybody's different. The metabolisms are different. The mentalities are different. You look at Bellingham, for goodness sake. I mean, he's another one-off. How old's he? And he's taken, La Liga by storm. He's taken, international football by storm. So sometimes, if you think the player has got the right mentality, which obviously Bellingham has, give them a game. Don't be frightened. Don't start them, maybe, but bring them into that arena. Because we are seeing players of that age who can do that. If the senior players aren't doing it, older players. I'm not just talking about our club. I'm talking about anywhere. And Brighton have had the wherewithal to put him in the team at that young age. And we see, we watched Burnley, some of the young, players they had who caused us problems. They can, play a part. Who used to say you won't win anything with kids. And, then you saw all the Scholes, the Beckhams and all that lot come through. It's not a write-off. What's the academy there for? It's there to produce the next talent. And if that next talent comes a bit earlier, then you think, well, then put them in. Give them an opportunity if you think they're right for it.
Right, changing gear. I was scrolling way back through the comments, and I owe Mikey an apology because he sat here for 20 minutes and he just listened. I'm going to throw this to Mikey first. These are consecutive comments in the YouTube chat. Christian Goddard, big picture, Forest will be absolutely fine this season. In at exactly the same time, Chris Watson, Forest are in big trouble. Forest will go down, which kind of sums up the polarised views of certainly the online fan base right now. Mikey, where are you at?
First off, you don't apologise. I enjoyed that, especially the Ryan Yates debate. I'm trying to think where I sit, probably somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. But anyway, to answer the question, Matt, where am I at right now? My head says we'll be all right, but my gut is telling me that I should be a little bit worried because we're still trying to bed in some of these players, and we've got a very tough run of fixtures coming up with no attacking options. So I guess I'm a little bit of both. I don't think we'll go down, partly because of what Garry was saying earlier on. The league this season is considerably weaker, I think, than what it was last season. You're going to have 2 teams, maybe even 3 that are marooned at the bottom there. And I think the rest of the teams will pretty much pull away. And I do believe we are one of those teams. So whilst at the moment it might look a bit precarious, I think people are thinking, oh my word, we've played all 3 promoted teams. We've only just beaten 1 in the last minute. We drew with the other 2. We didn't beat Brentford. We got beat at Liverpool. We chucked away 2 goals at Man United. They're right, and it is a little bit concerning, but it's still very early in the season. And I do believe, and I know the game's not played on paper, but if you look at the squads, there's a considerable difference in quality with our squad compared with some of those others. So I think the next 3 or 4 games, as Garry said, are really crucial for numerous reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about. And I'd love to see us somehow get a win against Aston Villa. Because if you remember this time last season, we're in a very similar position. I think we're in the bottom 3. We're struggling. Cooper got a bit of a vote of confidence, so there's nervousness around the ground. And we should have beaten Villa at home last season. And if it weren't for an Ashley Young 30-yarder, which he's never done in his career, apart from that, we would have done. So I think now's not the time for anybody to panic, although I do appreciate the polarising views because I flip in my head between it as well. But logic tells me we're going to be all right. The only other thing I said, I don't know whether it's on your list, Matt, is the lack of attacking options. And this is where would push me to the other side in worrying a little bit. None of these players have got injured during a match. So Origi injured in training, Hudson-Odoi injured in training, Awoniyi injured in training, Chris Wood injured in training. Isn't there a question to be asked around? I don't know. I don't even know what the question is. Are we pushing too hard? Because we need these players for a Saturday. So maybe it's just a freak of nature. Garry, you'll know more because you watch the training.
Yeah, but we train on mud heaps. We went down the training ground and down by the river. So it was a totally different thing. I mean, all the training pitches now, the training grounds are pristine. I don't think the normal grass or totally anymore. I think they're a double surface or whatever you like. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit aggravating, because you want your players to put everything into training. Yeah, sometimes you're going to get a misplaced challenge. That's always happened. You can't do anything about that. But I'm just a bit, suspect of surfaces. When you see now as well, when the pitches on a Saturday, they're that perfect, but they're that hard, they're that firm, that and you see some of the fragility of the football boots now. And when players get caught, we had sort of stronger boots in those days. Now you get caught and it looks really nasty. Your ankle gets turned. So there are a lot of mitigating circumstances. But it is concerning that players are getting more injuries in training than in the actual football matches. But I think it happens to all teams, and you'll see that throughout the season. But the lack of attacking options. What do we do? These big games coming up. Who do we play? Do you chance because Villa's the next game? Taiwo coming back in, saying, right, can you give me 60 minutes? I'd rather do that. Let a player start than bring him on later because he can win you the game rather than coming on to try and save a game. That's always. I always love the other way around. I like somebody to start. I would rather start than come on as sub. When I played. Because you can give it your everything for an hour, and then if you're shattered, you might have done something on the pitch in that hour that transforms a game. But being asked to transform it by coming on is always more difficult.
Just going back to we're completely screwed, we're going to be fine question, Temps. Where's your balance sit at the moment on that?
This is the weakest bottom end of the Premier League that there's been for some time. I think that Burnley, Sheffield United and Luton are all in trouble, and 2 or 3 other clubs who haven't invested properly find themselves competing in that bottom 6. We're not part of that. We've underperformed in some games. And I think Paul Taylor probably nailed the general mood in his Athletic piece this morning when he said Steve Cooper is now facing the same challenge he faced 12 months ago in having to gel a squad that has evolved at a pace that we haven't seen in the last 20 years at Forest. And look, you can laugh that off in the sense that we've spent a lot of money bringing in the kind of players that Steve Cooper wants. But the fact remains that those teams that are settled, that are winning consistently at the top end of the Premier League, have done so by adding two and three players and refining a formula that's already there. Brighton finished 15th, 16th, 15th before elevating themselves to the stature that they have now. Steve Cooper was a league manager at Swansea for 105 games before he came to Forest. He's managed Forest for 101 games. That's nothing. He's had a season and 10 games in the Premier League. That's nothing. Every single year that he's had in club football, he's made an incremental game. The challenge he's got now is the rate at which he can improve the performance levels and the number of points taken compatible with the ambition of the ownership, who ultimately have their own view of the pace at which Forest should evolve into a genuine force in the Premier League. There's division in the fan base, as you've seen from those comments that you highlighted earlier, by those that think we're overachieving and those that think that we're underachieving. This being the world that it is, there's very few people that are just satisfied with where we find ourselves at the minute. But that's probably where I sit. I know that if Steve Cooper loses 3 games in a row, he's under threat from the ownership. I know if Steve Cooper beats Villa, all of a sudden he's punching the air and we're all back on side with him at the City Ground at the weekend. But are we overachieving or underachieving? In the last 21 years, we've spent a season and 10 games in the Premier League. So for me, this is one of the high points. We should celebrate it. We should get behind the manager, create an atmosphere on Saturday that is becoming of what we've established over the last year and a bit, and go and beat Aston Villa, because that will give everybody the impetus they need to enjoy their football and to win more games.
Historically, last season, we played better against the better teams. We beat Liverpool, we beat West Ham, we beat Brighton. Brighton, we got that we drew down there 0-0 and beat them at our place. We got good results. We drew with Manchester City. We seem to do better against better teams. But it's just the concern at the moment, if we don't have anybody up front, that could be, the big, downside of what's coming up in these next 3 or 4 games. That's my only concern. I'm going to concern about Steve because, he's not changing the way he kept us up last season, and he did last season for us. And to see 3 teams who got promoted stay up last season was tremendous. I don't think it happens all the time. And like you say, these 3 teams are struggling at the bottom: Sheffield United, Burnley, Luton. Bournemouth are getting sucked in a little bit. Everton got themselves out a little bit. So it's not going to be easy. And, the other teams might start picking results up at some point, and then it does become a concern. But, I think we've weathered a massive storm when we saw the fixture list come out and the run we had, especially of away games: Liverpool away, Man City away, Man United away, Arsenal away, Chelsea away. Crikey, we've come out of that not overly bad. We've been beaten, but not beaten them, massively. Chelsea, it was a good win, but Chelsea, they're struggling big style at the moment. People should be worrying more about what they're doing, not what we're doing. I still think we've got a strong squad, and when we've got a fit squad, we'll be okay.
The key thing now, you've learned it there, is Taiwo, because physios now don't tell you a player is fit or unfit. They'll tell you about his load and what they think he can do at a particular moment in time. If Taiwo Awoniyi is past fit to start, we can go toe-to-toe with Aston Villa. If he isn't, I do fear for us in these couple of games ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I apologise if I've said this already in the podcast. I recorded one earlier where I might have made this point, or in this podcast, but we've signed Elanga and Hudson-Odoi for a combined 20 million. And we're playing Villa, who've signed Diaby and Bailey for a combined 80 million. So we're a little bit off that still. But I think if we step back, I think we're only one result away from where we should be. I think we've had one dud performance all season. Well, one dud purely against Liverpool in a way, and 15 minutes against Luton where it just cascaded to all hell. But otherwise, I think we've been kind of okay. I don't think we're as bad as people are making out. I don't think we're a million miles off it. But I am a bit worried it does
Well,
it could fracture even more.
Look how many managers Chelsea have got for all their money, and where's it got them? The bottom half of the table, more or less. Be careful what you wish for all the time. Steve has done a magnificent job at our football club, and I still think he can do continue that and take us the next step. The next step doesn't come automatically overnight. Brighton didn't do it overnight. West Ham didn't. Newcastle, Eddie Howe come in, and they were down at the bottom. People forget that a little bit, and look where they are now. So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Matt,
I think
it's an unforgiving league. Sorry to chip in. It's unforgiving, and if you look at our start, we've only played 10 games, and we've played I think 5 of the top 6 last season. Most of them are away from home. We have had a tough start, and now on the flip side, we played the promoted teams. Now I think we're going to play a lot of teams sort of in and around us. So I think after the next sort of 6 to 8 games, you'll probably have a better feel in terms of where we are. And I concur with Temps. I think we'll be all right for 2 reasons. 1, because there's some rubbish teams in this league, I'll be honest with you. And I think 2, because I think we're better than what we're showing on the pitch right now. So I think we'll be fine. Now's the time to get behind the managers, we're saying here, and just roll the guys on, because the next month is going to be crucial. And if we hit the ground running and get some good results, we're going to have a good season. So let's just take stock. We're only a quarter of the way into the season, plenty of time left.
Yeah, I think you've hit my worry there about get behind people. Obviously, don't tell fans what they should do, but my worry is I think we'll lose to Villa, but I think we'll be fine if people keep their heads. But I can imagine that I can already see the meltdown if we lose to Villa.
It wouldn't surprise me if we got something against Villa.
Yeah, I think
that wouldn't surprise me, but I think we could. Yeah, they're really good. They're a top team. I think they should be judged in the same way as playing Spurs this season.
They've got goal scorers. They've got fit goal scorers, and that makes so much difference. I
just worry about the way the fans are this season isn't the same.
If Alvarez and Haaland got injured and were out for a month, Man City might just struggle. They've not been the Man City of last season. They've lost a couple of games. Tottenham are top of the league, and with no games in hand, they're clear at the moment. Whether it will transpire that it continues like that, I don't know. But things can change around a little bit, and it's nice to see that. But Man City do look ominous again. You just feel they're going to click into gear and just run away with it again, which will be a little bit like Max Verstappen winning the Grand Prix one after the other. But let's hope somebody sticks a little spanner in the works. And I'm just looking forward to. Is it Sunday we play? It's Sunday afternoon, isn't it? Yeah. Looking forward to that, and let's be positive. We've got a lot to be positive about. We've had a lot to be negative about in the last 20 odd years, and what we've seen at this football club the last couple of seasons has lifted not just us lot. It lifted Nottingham, and rightly so. And so that's down to Steve and his staff. And even think about him disappearing from our club is pretty strange. And I once our team are fit, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. I think we just need to have I think there'll be a really good atmosphere against Villa. I'm just a bit alarmed at how divided people are. I thought there'd be a drop off, but I'm reading too much into online fans. But it's really alarming how people have really turned.
Look, Matt, if we beat Luton, none of this would have happened.
Agreed.
The manner of the Luton game, we didn't lose it, but we threw it away. We threw 3 points away, and it's not the Liverpool game. It's just that Luton game. If we win that, we're comfortably middle of the table. We should have beat Palace, but there we go. From last season, we'd have been delighted with a point at Palace. This season, we're disappointed we didn't get 3.
Yeah, don't worry about it, Matt. People care, and they express their passion in different ways. Some retreat back in and think logically. Some go up. Some get all their emotions straight out. It's just people care, and I'd rather have people care than don't care. You can debate about good and bad stuff all the time, but there's passion there. And I tell you what, those people that are saying, "Oh, we're in trouble," will probably be the loudest at the ground on Sunday, because they'll be desperate to turn it around, because they care. I was going to say something else there. You kicked me off the podcast, but they give something in here, and that's what it's all about.
I think we all know what you were going to say.
Yes.
Guys, my coughing and spluttering. I can't shake this flipping cold off. this cold, cough and cold I've had for about 4 or 5 days.
True. And I think you make a fair comment there, Mikey, as well. Right, we've been going for an hour. Just very quickly, because if anyone's got anything else to say, I certainly don't. Mikey, anything else from you?
No, I've personally got a busy week this week. I think I'm off to the fireworks at Temps on Trent Bridge on Saturday. Looking forward to that. So hopefully a great weekend for Nottingham. Fireworks display followed by 3 points on Sunday. That's what I want.
True. Temps, anything else before we depart?
Well, I was going to say 3-point plan to beat Villa. Play 4-5-1 with wingers or 4-3-3, whatever you want to call it. Change the keeper. Start Taiwo.
Sounds good to me. Gary, any quick final words?
Yeah, I've got to go back to my game yesterday. How did the boy at Fulham not get sent off?
Polina.
How the hell was that not reviewed? I don't care what. It was violent conduct. And as a player and an ex-player, you know exactly what he was doing. He meant that. He caught him flush in the face and he got away with it. And then he goes and scores the equaliser. Absolute disgrace. And the journalist in the paper this morning, no mention of it in 2 of the 3 papers I read. And the only other one was he was lucky to avoid VAR, sort of whatever you call what they do. It's just scandalous how, it's still going and it's still not right. An elbow in the face is one of the worst things you can, do on a football pitch. It's violent conduct. He didn't even get booked and never even looked at it. What is going on?
Yeah, I had a bet on that Spurs Fulham game that would have come in if he'd been the first player booked, and he absolutely got away with it. I don't know how he did it, but yeah, time and time again. Bet responsibly. What was I going to say? Oh, I watched 2 good films, Plane, standard Gerard Butler film, and Joyride, both on Amazon, if anyone wants something to watch tonight. Right, we talked for over an hour. Lots of interesting views, lots of people with us. Very much appreciated. We're back on Wednesday. I spoke with John Bruin, who's a writer who's on the Football Weekly podcast a lot, talking about the Premier League this season, Forest in particular, obviously. So do join us for that. And then we're back on Thursday with a match preview with some of these gents, quite possibly. Mikey, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Temps, thank you.
Cheers, fellas.
Gary, thank you for giving us a tour of the house.
Pleasure as always. Yeah, so just checking that the dog wasn't outside because the back gate's a little bit dubious, but yeah.
He's got a lot of land as well, Gary, hasn't he? He must have acres.
No, it's not mine. I'm not at home at the moment. I'm home tomorrow.
Yeah, he's on location. Gary's always on location. So yeah, absolutely.
Location, it makes sense.
Right, we'll leave it there. Good to have so many people with us. Like I say, we'll be back on Wednesday, then Thursday, and then this time next week. And appreciate people's patience that we're a little bit later in the day doing this. Have a good few days, and we shall see you soon.